Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. It's time to know more so you can say no more. It's time for the Clearly Christian Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Cy Smith.
I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this is Clearly Christian, a podcast about what it means to see the world from God's perspective and the impact this has on training the next generation to live a life consistent with a biblical worldview. If you like the show, you've been listening for a while, again, I'd encourage you to hit the subscribe button, leave a review. That'll let others know the show's worth listening to. Certainly help us advance the cause of Christian education. Today's extra credit version of the Clearly Christian Podcast is a deeper dive into the chalkboard points from our recent conversation with Dr. Michael Lindsay. He's the president of Taylor University in Upland, Indiana. Well, the full episode is just live now, so just look for the picture of Dr. Lindsay there, and you'll find everything you need. So now for some extra credit, let's go ahead and dive in, and with that, I'll bring in the show's host, Brian Lefelock, Brian Media Strategies. Brian, you heard the show, you heard this interview. What was your take, and what are some good follow-up questions that we think the audience might be interested in?
So I'm interested. He's a dynamo, and he's doing amazing things, and you mentioned how much you like what he is doing. What are you most enthralled about? If you had to pick one thing, what really excites you about Dr. Lindsay and the things that he's accomplishing?
Well, really, I think his pursuit of innovation, he spent some time talking about that. He's a creative thinker, and he really, again, walks that out. He doesn't just say, hey, we need to get better, and I don't know what that looks like, but you people need to try harder. You know, he's defined getting better as innovation and said, this is how we can get better. And let's do innovative things at the college level that nobody else is doing, and that will capture market share, and it will also capture customer attention. And I think that is a gold for even those of us that are leading any organization, but also especially those of us leading K-12s, because there is such a market for that, because it's broad, right? There's primary, there's late elementary education, junior high, second. Each one of them has a golden chance for innovation at that level. I brought the STEM program to Mansfield Christian School. We weren't doing that at all. But I said, hey, that's the future. How could we do that? And then I have some unique ideas for how we can take STEM to be more vocational minded, so that kids, it's just for engineers. No, it's not. It's for people who want to build houses. It's for people who want to be plumbers. It's for people who want to be electricians. It's got a lot of great trades aspect to it as well. And so we need to marry that with STEM also. And then media production. I brought that to the school as well and said, that's a great, the future is video and not just radio, but it's video and it's streaming and it's podcast, and kids love that. Let's get them exposed to that early on. So we can do innovation very, very well. And I love that he chases that down with great enthusiasm.
And he seems to have a business mindset. So in your show, you talk about leadership and the business mindset that has to come with that. And he brought up the idea of education as a business. In your situation, you have to include, and his as well, Christianity falls into that as well. And so you've got education, which people think, well, that shouldn't be business, and yet it is. And then you bring in Christianity in. How do you wrap those three together?
Yeah, that's a great question. But we don't really see the world any other way. And it's such a great opportunity that we get, is that as believers, we can't do our business outside of our faith. And that's one of the things that we tried to tackle on this show, is we have to get rid of this artificial divide between what is sacred and religious and what is secular or non-religious, and put these things into boxes. That's not reality. All truth is God's truth. You may stick a Christian label on it or not, but if it's true, guess where it started? It started with God. You can't start from the Creator and say, well, this exists apart from the Creator. No, it doesn't work like that. So business is one of those great examples where we say business, just like everything else, was designed to be done from a Christian perspective. It's only over the centuries that we've taken God out. So let's put God back where he belongs, and let's do business from a Christian perspective. And boy, is that sorely needed in our society, because kids are not being told, how do I do business from a biblical worldview? What is the purpose of profit, right? How do I turn that back over? And books have been written on this, but I'll just give you the bottom line. We're doing these things for the common good of others. And money is a byproduct, right? I mean, if we have something that people want, the money will take care of itself. But we're not doing this to get rich. And most business leaders will tell you really good business, they're not either. They're doing it because they have a passion for this cause and they love this industry and they just really find general satisfaction. Well, guess where all that comes from? It comes from God. That's how he made you. You were wired to think like that. And if you play out that, or if that plays out the way God has hardwired you, it will manifest itself in a successful business. And you'll say, wow, okay, I really am being used for God's glory because I am benefiting my fellow man by using these talents in business. I just happen to make good money.
Absolutely. Let's talk about money a little bit. We talked about that in the show. Dr. Lindsay mentioned nonprofit versus profit. He said that's just a tax status, which I thought was an amazing way to look at it. It's not about anything else other than where you fall on the tax plan. You've got a capital campaign there at Mansfield Christian Schools, and you're trying to raise money, and you're trying to grow the school. That all takes money. Does nonprofit versus profit hinder, or how do you marriage those two together?
Right. It's a challenge because everybody assumes if you're a nonprofit, then you should learn to live with less.
Yeah.
And that's right. And that's one thing that I really like that he gravitates to, and we said it in the show. Listen, to be really good at education, to have excellent education, it's expensive. It is expensive. Education is one of the most costly endeavors out there in our society because there's so many costs that go along, right? You have personnel, you have facilities, you have extracurriculars, you have a million different things that drive the cost of education up. So you can't say we're going to do excellent education in a nonprofit, give us what you can mindset, and we'll scrape together whatever nonprofit donations we can, and somehow we'll just wave a magic wand and produce excellence. It doesn't work like that. And I'm not saying money is the key to everything, but let's face it, if we need these better resources, or if we need even some of these better people, or we need some of these better facilities, we're going to have to spend a little bit more money to get there. And really, there was a president of Cedarville years ago who was fond of saying something to the effect of, listen, if it's going to have God's name on it, then it better have excellence stamped all over it. Because we don't want to be out there selling Christian products that are inferior because we couldn't afford something better. That doesn't say anything good about Christianity whatsoever. So we don't get any money from the state of Ohio in the sense that we can go to the Facilities Commission and say, hey, guess what? We're out of room at Mansfield Christian School because we're booming and we've got a great culture here. We've got good mission-minded families, and I've got modular units out back because we don't have enough classroom space for these kids. So please, state of Ohio, will you help us? Well, we can get a few grants here and there, but we can't get the millions and millions of dollars that our public school counterparts can get. So we have to go out to these taxpayers and say, hey, I know you're paying property taxes to support your public school. I know you're paying tuition on top of that to support you having your kids here, but will you help us go even further and make a significant donation to a capital campaign? So yes, we're involved in a capital campaign right now of $30 million, and that's the biggest we've ever seen. $10 million for classrooms, $10 million for an auditorium, and $10 million for a new gym. All three critically needed to keep up with the demand for Christian education here at Mansfield Christian Schools. We don't have any choice but to say this is how we're going to have to function as a nonprofit to raise money for this campaign. But to be excellent, you have to face that reality and chase after those dollars.
And so you don't, in fact, Dr. Smith, one of the things that I know you want to do through this podcast is reach people who are looking for ways that they can impact. Maybe they're not teaching, maybe they're not working at a Christian school, maybe their kids are grown, but they might have access to money and things that they can have to kind of further the kingdom. Do you have an issue? We don't talk about that much in the show, though. We're hoping to reach some of those folks. What benefit is it to someone who has money to give? If their kids don't go there, if they've grown, whatever the reason, like when you ask, what's the benefit?
Yeah, exactly. Well, this school was designed to impact the kingdom. And we're trying to, as I say on the show, we're trying to create more Christians, right, starting at those early ages who come to Christ and know the Lord and graduate with this biblical worldview, who then function in society as Christians. They make decisions as Christians, like we talked about. They run their business as Christians. They vote like Christians. Their position on social issues is Christian, right? And they have that biblical world. So they see the world the way God wanted them to see the world. Are they perfect? No. They're still sinners saved by grace. but they have a really great training academically. They can compete in the academic square, politically, intellectually, emotionally, socially. They can walk down any path in society and be well prepared to say, you know what, this is God's perspective on it. This is right, this is wrong, and if we move in the direction God wants us to go, we'll be better off. And listen, society, they could use a lot more Christians. Let's face it, right? I mean, we see what the divorce rate is doing. We see the abortion rate. We see all these things that we know are harmful to culture. They work. When cultures go down these paths, the culture usually falls apart. History has shown that. And so we need more Christians out there. So we tell those people, listen, Mansfield Christian School is a great investment because you are making your community better, the state better, the nation better, and even the world better as we really expand this group and say, yep, this school is about training young people from very early on to see the world from God's perspective, have those convictions, live them out, and then multiply. We want them to marry other believers and have kids and grow and expand their family. So the bigger we get and the more kids we service that way, the better our community, state, nation, and world get. And boy, we need more schools like us to really make a dent in the culture. So that's how you get involved, knowing that this is going to make a difference. We're starting to see that now as things start to turn a little bit more in our favor in our country, because we're seeing what's gone wrong so many decades prior. And we're saying, ooh, hey, I think there is something to this biblical worldview stuff, because if we'd have followed those plans years ago, we wouldn't be in some of the mess we're in today.
And so Dr. Lindsay also, as he was going through, was talking about innovation. And so he was bringing up AI. And as we wrap up, and the last question I have for you to dive deeper into the idea of AI, how do you get in front of, how do you know what it's going to look like in the future so that you can, is AI, if it's left unchecked on its own to create itself, which is kind of what everybody's afraid of, will it include a biblical perspective, or is that going to be our job to influence AI? How is that going to work?
Well, that's a good question. I wish I had a really great answer there to say, yep, this is how AI is going to work. But like everybody else, I'm kind of watching it unfold. I do know that I can't go to a conference or a meeting right now without this coming up. So Christians have to be out on the front end and they have to be figuring this out. And I think we're all asking that same questions. Right now, how it's working is when we're asking for input from AI, we're asking for input from a biblical worldview. And we're saying, hey, don't just give me any old answer. Give me the answer that takes into the biblical narrative. So give me what a biblical account of this or a Christian would say on this issue. And AI, to its credit, is pretty solid. It doesn't just give you any old thing and say, well, that's not PC enough, or this is narrow-minded Christianity. It doesn't really take those opinions yet. It's really laying it out there and pulling everything that's designed from a biblical worldview to give you that response. So far, we've been relatively pleased with what we're seeing, but we do still have a lot of work to do to get out in front of it and make sure that it is not going a direction, obviously, that we don't want it to go, and especially for our kids, right? That's the key. It's one thing for you and I to look at those answers and say, well, that's a little off. We might recognize that as mature adults, and we need to tweak that a little bit. Or that's obviously a computer-generated response based on some material that didn't even go together maybe as good as it should have, because AI is certainly not perfect. But yet, a child, boy, they're gonna take it for face value, and they're just gonna assume this is the gospel truth. And we've got to get to them sooner rather than later, and make sure that that teacher gets in front of them and speaks into them truth, so that then they can have that good filter, even for AI. That's something to ponder. Having a mental filter, a human filter, even to filter out what AI presents. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you, Brian. Great questions. And again, we just appreciate you listeners out there. Again, if you like the show, help us spread the word. Subscribe, follow along. Again, we certainly would appreciate that. And remember, the only way we're going to turn things around in our country is to increase the number of people who hold a biblical worldview and live that out every day. And the greatest hope we have to get there is Christian education. Thank you again for listening. I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this has been Clearly Christian.
Thank you for listening to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. Hear more episodes at clearlychristianeducation.com. If you'd like more information about Christian education in your neighborhood, or if you're interested in education opportunities at Mansfield Christian School, or if you agree with Dr. Smith and want to help him in his mission to influence and awaken Christian America, you can send Dr. Smith an email through the clearlychristianeducation.com website. Message him on the Clearly Christian LinkedIn or Facebook page, or call the Clearly Christian Connection line at 419-756-5651. This has been the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith on clearlychristianeducation.com, brought to you in conjunction with Mansfield Christian School, a Bryan Media production.